Luna Human Embassy was one of the busiest places in the solar Concord. Every day, ships from dozens of alien species arrived, carrying diplomats, researchers, traders, and explorers. Humans had earned a special place in the galaxy because of their creativity, courage, and unpredictable behavior. Many aliens came to study them, hoping to understand how humans survived so many harsh worlds and still kept fighting for progress. On this calm morning, everything seemed normal. Engineers were checking energy shields, officers were reviewing docking requests, and cleaning bots ran along the floors with low buzzing sounds. Nothing unusual. Nothing strange. At least, that was what Sergeant Daniel Hale thought before he met Lyra of the Aetherin. Lyra had been assigned to the human embassy for only 3 days. But in these 3 days, she had already asked more questions than most aliens asked in a year. The Aetherin species was known for 2 things: bright, crystal-like eyes and endless curiosity. They were peaceful, smart, polite, and extremely direct. They did not understand embarrassment, awkwardness, or private topics. For them, every question was simply information. Daniel had been chosen as Lyra's guide because he was patient, friendly, and good at explaining human behavior in simple words. But he did not know he was about to face one of the most surprising questions of his entire life. Daniel and Lyra were walking through the engineering wing. The huge engines hummed softly, and holoscreens showed energy readings in bright blue light. Lyra watched everything carefully, recording details on her small crystal data pad. "Human Daniel," she said in her soft, musical voice. "May I ask a biological question?" Daniel paused. He already felt a warning inside his mind. When aliens asked about human biology, it usually ended with red faces or confused stares. Still, he smiled. "Sure, Lyra. What do you want to know?" "CS, cross-side." Lyra looked directly into his eyes, calm and serious. "How often can humans mate?" Daniel dropped the wrench he was holding. It hit the metal floor so loudly that 3 engineers turned around to stare. He blinked. "I'm sorry." "What?" Lyra repeated the question slowly, thinking maybe he had not heard it the first time. "How often can humans mate?" One engineer quietly walked away. Another one pretended to focus very hard on a control panel that was not even turned on. Daniel felt heat rise in his face. Lyra, on the other hand, stood completely calm, her eyes glowing with pure scientific interest. To her, this was a simple research question, like asking how often humans breathe or sleep. Daniel took a deep breath. "Lyra, that's a very personal question." "Is it?" she asked with confusion. "I do not understand. Aetherin discuss biological cycles openly. It is important for measuring health and energy levels. We ask each other all the time." "Well, humans don't," Daniel replied quickly. "At least, not at work. And not during a tour of the engine room." Lyra tilted her head. "I see. So this is a cultural boundary. Very interesting. Please explain how humans decide which topics are private." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "It's complicated." She nodded, writing something on her datapad. "Complicated cultural privacy systems noted." He wished she hadn't written that. Then Lyra said, with complete innocence, "Perhaps I should choose a statistically average human to answer this question. You seem average." Daniel almost choked. "Average? Yes," she said seriously. "If you were below average, I assume you would inform me." Someone behind them snorted with laughter. Daniel sighed heavily. He tried to stay calm. Lyra wasn't teasing him. She genuinely had no idea her words sounded strange. Before Daniel could think of a safe answer, the base alarms suddenly began to scream. Wee-oo, wee-oo, wee-oo. The lights flashed red, and an automated voice echoed through the halls. "Warning. Unidentified vessel approaching Luna Base. Energy signature, unstable. All personnel prepare for emergency protocols." Daniel's expression changed instantly. Training took over. He turned toward Lyra. "We need to go. Now." Lyra's eyes sparkled with excitement, not fear. The Aetherin were fascinated by unknown phenomena. An unidentified vessel? This is most fortunate. I have never seen a first contact event in real time. Let's hope it's not first contact, Daniel muttered. Unknown ships with unstable energy are usually trouble. They hurried down the corridor. Engineers rushed past them, carrying repair tools and emergency kits. Officers opened secure gates and activated shield barriers. The entire base moved like a well-trained machine. As they reached the observation deck, the huge, transparent shield showed the vast darkness of space, and there it was, a strange, damaged ship drifting toward Luna Base. It was shaped like a crescent, with glowing cracks running along its hull. Energy flickered from its engines, and one side looked half-melted, as if it had passed through something extremely hot. "Do you recognize the design?" Daniel asked. Lyra shook her head slowly. "No. This is not from any Concord species. Its hull composition is unusual. It may be from outside mapped space." Daniel frowned. "That's not good." The ship wobbled in space, spinning slowly, heading straight toward the base. The comms system crackled. A voice shouted, "All emergency teams prepare for potential crash impact. Shields at 60%. Daniel grabbed a headset. "This is Sergeant Hale. I'm on the observation deck with Aetherin researcher Lyra. Do you need evacuation assistance?" "Negative," the officer replied. "Stay in position and wait for further instructions. We may need cultural experts if the crew is alive." Lyra pressed her hand against the glass. Her eyes glowed brighter. "Human Daniel, this is remarkable. A damaged vessel arriving without communication. This could be an extreme distress signal. We must help them." Daniel looked at her. Even in a crisis, her curiosity never faded. It was admirable, and a little dangerous. "We will help if we can," he said. "But first we need to know if there's a threat." Suddenly, the ship's engines gave one last spark, and went dark. The vessel dropped, falling toward the moon's surface, only a few kilometers from the base. Lyra stepped closer. "Impact trajectory is unstable. It may explode if the energy in its core is not controlled. And we're the closest responders," Daniel said quietly. He felt that heavy, familiar feeling he had faced on many missions. The feeling before danger, before responsibility, before the unknown. Lyra turned to him with a serious expression, finally understanding the risk. "What will humans do now?" Daniel straightened. His voice was firm. "We do what humans always do. We run toward the problem, not away from it." For the first time since arriving on the base, Lyra truly saw what made humans special. They didn't only survive danger. They faced it head-on. Her respect for Daniel and his species deepened. The crash alarm sounded again. The ship hit the moon's surface with a bright flash of light, throwing dust into space. A shockwave rippled across the ground. The base shook. Lyra grabbed the railing. "The vessel has lost structural integrity. We must hurry." Daniel nodded. "Emergency team will deploy in 60 seconds. You're coming with me. But stay close and follow every instruction." Lyra smiled faintly. "Of course. And afterward, we can continue our earlier discussion." Daniel groaned. "Let's survive this first." Together, they ran toward the deployment bay. They didn't know it yet, but this crash would change everything. For humans, for Lyra's people, and for whatever mysterious species arrived unannounced at Luna Base. The emergency sirens continued to echo through Luna Base. As Daniel and Lyra reached the deployment bay, the large metal doors slid open, revealing several armored suits, oxygen helmets, hover bikes, and supply crates. The emergency response team was already gathering, checking equipment with fast, trained movements. Lieutenant Mara Voss, a sharp-eyed officer known for her calm attitude during crises, spotted Daniel immediately. "Hale, you're on Team Alpha," she said. "Your alien researcher is coming as well?" Lyra bowed politely. "I will not interfere. I simply wish to observe and assist if needed." Mara gave her a quick, assessing look. "Fine. But stay close to Hale. The crash site may be unstable." Lyra nodded seriously. "Understood." Daniel helped her put on a light protective suit adjusted for alien physiology. The Aetherin did not need much oxygen, but they still required shielding from sharp lunar dust and possible radiation leaks. Daniel mounted one hoverbike while Lyra climbed behind him, holding onto a small rail. The bike hummed to life, floating a few inches above the ground. "All teams, move out," Mara commanded. The deployment doors opened, revealing the vast gray surface of the moon. The stars shone sharply in the black sky, and the faint curve of Earth glowed blue in the distance. It was peaceful until one looked toward the crash site. A trail of melted rock and glowing debris marked the path of the alien vessel. Smoke-like particles drifted upward in slow motion due to the weak lunar gravity. Daniel accelerated. The hoverbike sped across the surface, kicking up clouds of fine dust behind them. Other team members followed closely. Lyra leaned forward. "Human Daniel, the vessel seems to have lost all power. I sense no stable energy patterns." "You can sense energy?" he asked, surprised. "Yes," she replied. "Aetherin crystals inside our bodies react to certain frequencies. All I feel now is chaos and collapse." Daniel frowned. "That means we need to hurry." They reached the crash site within minutes. The alien ship lay half buried in the lunar ground, one side still glowing with heat. A large crack split the hull open like a broken shell. Team Alpha dismounted, spreading out carefully. Mara pointed. "Check for survivors. But do not enter the ship until radiation scans are complete." Daniel activated his scanner. "Low radiation, but the internal structure is unstable." Lyra stepped beside him, fascinated. "This material, it is not metal, it feels organic." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Organic? Like alive?" Not alive," she corrected. "But grown instead of built." The idea made Daniel uneasy. A ship grown like a plant or creature? It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Suddenly, his scanner beeped. "Heat signature detected inside," he said. "Someone, or something, is alive." Mara moved toward him. "Location?" Daniel pointed at the cracked hull. "There. Not far from the opening." Lyra's eyes brightened. "We must help them." "Slow down," Mara warned. "If the structure collapses, we lose more than a survivor." Daniel secured his helmet and approached the opening. The metal-like material was warm and slightly flexible under his gloves. It felt biological, almost like thick skin. He shivered. As he stepped inside, Lyra followed, her eyes scanning every detail. The interior of the ship was dim. Strange, glowing growths pulsed on the walls like veins of light. The air felt heavy, as if carrying microscopic dust. Daniel shone his light forward. There, lying on the floor, was a figure, small, curled, fragile, a survivor. Daniel approached cautiously and knelt beside it. The being was humanoid but thin, with faint, luminescent lines running across its body. Its skin looked pale and smooth, like cooled glass. Lyra gasped softly. "This species, I have never seen anything like it." Daniel checked for breathing. The survivor's chest rose very slowly, almost too softly to notice. "They're alive," he said, "but weak." Lyra examined the glowing lines. These markings suggest their energy core is failing. Their body relies on internal power flow. Daniel lifted his comm. "Mara, we have one survivor. Small humanoid, unconscious. Need a med team." Before he could finish, the ship groaned, releasing a high-pitched sound. The walls shook. Lyra grabbed Daniel's arm. "The structure is collapsing. Team Alpha, evacuate now," Mara ordered. Daniel lifted the survivor carefully into his arms. It weighed almost nothing, like a child made of feathers and glass. Then he turned and ran toward the exit. Pieces of the organic hull fell behind them. Bright sparks burst from cracked growths on the wall. The entire ship was breaking apart. Lyra stayed close, helping Daniel keep the survivor stable as they ran. They leapt out of the ship just as a section of the hull crashed behind them, sending a wave of dust into the air. Mara hurried over. "You two all right?" Daniel nodded. Yes, but this one needs immediate medical attention. Bring them to the med pod, Mara said. Alpha team, clear the area. Beta team will arrive to secure the debris. Daniel and Lyra rushed toward the emergency med pod set up on the surface. It unfolded like a small tent with glowing medical tools inside. Daniel placed the survivor gently onto the cushioned bed. The pod's sensors activated automatically. Lyra leaned over the readings. Their energy pathways are unstable. If the inner core collapses, their life signs will stop. Daniel frowned. Can the pod help? Yes, Lyra said, but we must connect their internal flow to an external stabilizer. Etherin crystal energy can support it temporarily. She removed a small, shimmering crystal from her pocket. It pulsed with a soft blue glow. Daniel watched her. You're giving your own energy? Yes, she replied calmly. Aetherin crystals regenerate. This being may not. She placed the crystal against the survivor's chest. The blue glow spread gently into the glowing lines on their body. The readings on the screen steadied slightly. Daniel felt a strange respect for Lyra. Her curiosity sometimes caused awkward situations, but her compassion was undeniable. The survivor suddenly twitched. Daniel leaned closer. They're waking up. The being slowly opened its eyes, large, bright, and shimmering like liquid silver. They stared at Daniel and Lyra, with confusion and fear. Lyra spoke softly. Do not be afraid. You are safe. The survivor tried to speak, but only a weak sound came out, like a soft chime. Daniel pressed a communicator against his helmet. We need a translator unit. Mara ran over, handing them a compact universal translator. Lyra attached it near the survivor's head. Please try to speak again. The survivor whispered a few faint words. The translator processed the sound, and a weak voice emerged. Help. Must warn. Danger. Daniel exchanged a tense look with Lyra. Danger from what? The survivor closed their eyes briefly, gathering strength. Then they spoke again, voice trembling through the translator. They are coming. The Devourers. They destroyed our world, and they will come for you. Daniel felt a chill crawl down his spine. Lyra's crystal dimmed slightly as she continued to stabilize the being's energy. Who are the Devourers? Daniel asked. The survivor's eyes filled with fear. A force that consumes everything. Worlds, ships, life. Nothing survives. Daniel inhaled sharply. How far behind them are they? The being whispered. Not far. We fled. But they follow energy trails. Lyra's face grew pale. Energy trails, including the crash site. Daniel immediately stood up. We need to warn the base. Mara nodded. I'll contact command. But the survivor grabbed Daniel's sleeve with surprising strength. Listen, humans, you must prepare. They do not negotiate. They do not stop. Only species strong enough, brave enough, can face them. Daniel asked quietly. Why warn us? Why warn us? The survivor's voice softened. Because humans fight, even when all hope is gone. You might stand a chance. Daniel swallowed. We'll protect you. And we'll protect our base. The survivor weakly nodded. Then alarms erupted again across the communication lines. This is command. Unknown energy signatures detected approaching Luna base. Lyra looked at Daniel, eyes wide. Could it be the Devourers? Daniel's voice hardened with determination. Then we get ready. He turned toward the horizon, where dark shapes were beginning to appear far across the lunar surface. Humanity had faced many threats before, but this one felt different, and it was only the beginning. The emergency alarms echoed through every corridor of Luna base for the second time that day. But this time, the sound felt heavier, darker, and far more frightening. The unknown energy signatures moving toward the moon were not ordinary vessels. Their pattern was strange, chaotic, and aggressive. Daniel stood outside the medpod with Lyra and Lieutenant Mara, staring at the horizon where faint, shifting shapes appeared against the black sky. Dust on the lunar surface trembled lightly from distant vibrations. Lyra's crystal pendant dimmed as she continued stabilizing the survivor lying inside the med pod. The survivor's glowing lines pulsed weakly, but they were conscious now. Eyes half open. Daniel leaned over them. "We need to know more. What are the devourers? What do they want?" The survivor tried to lift their head but fell back. Their voice through the translator was soft, almost breaking. "They take energy. Life. Everything. They grow stronger each time they consume." Mara frowned. "Are they ships? Machines? Living creatures?" "Both. And neither," the survivor whispered. "They adapt. They change. They multiply. Our people tried to run, but we were too bright, too full of energy. We attracted them." Lyra placed a gentle hand on the survivor's shoulder. "Your ship? It was chased until it collapsed, wasn't it?" The survivor nodded weakly. "Yes. We escaped only minutes ahead of them, but they follow all energy trails, even small ones." Daniel exhaled. "Meaning they're coming here because of your ship's crash." Lyra's eyes widened. "Or because of our base." Mara tapped her communicator. "Command, this is Lieutenant Voss. We need full defensive shields and evacuation routes prepared immediately. Unknown hostile forces may be approaching." A voice responded sharply. "Affirmative. All squads prepare for rapid deployment." Daniel studied the horizon. The shapes were getting clearer, dark, jagged forms moving like shadows with faint red glows inside them. They didn't fly like ships. They drifted, flowed, almost like living things. Lyra stepped closer to Daniel. "They are not stable forms. Their shapes shift with energy levels." Daniel muttered. "Great. Shape-shifting space monsters. Just what we needed." Mara nodded grimly. "We have to assume they're hostile until proven otherwise." Preparing the base. Back inside Luna Base, chaos moved with strict order. Officers ran from station to station. Heavy blast doors sealed. Shield generators hummed as they charged. Red lights flashed along every corridor. Daniel, Lyra, and Mara moved with the crowd, escorting the survivor placed on a small anti-gravity stretcher toward the central medical chamber. As they walked, Lyra kept glancing at Daniel. Something weighed on her mind. "Daniel," she said softly. "Yes? If the devourers consume energy, then our weapons may only feed them." Daniel paused. "You might be right," Mara overheard. "Then what do we do? Throw rocks at them?" Lyra shook her head. "We need to analyze their structure. Find a weakness." Daniel pointed at the survivor. "And they're the only one who knows anything." When the group reached the medical chamber, doctors immediately surrounded the stretcher. Machines hummed, scanning the survivor's body. The glowing lines on their skin flickered like dim lights in a storm. The medical chief, Dr. Amina Shafiq, approached Daniel. "Sergeant, is this the alien you found?" "Yes, ma'am," she nodded. "We'll keep them stable. But we need more information. If any threat is coming, we must know. Now." Lyra stepped forward. "Doctor, please connect me to your analysis systems. Etherin crystals can detect energy frequencies." Dr. Amina blinked. "You can detect energy frequencies with your body?" Lyra nodded. "Of course. It is normal for us." Amina exhaled. "All right. We'll use every tool we can." Daniel admired Lyra's calm bravery. Despite the fear, she focused on helping everyone. The survivor speaks. After a few moments of rest, the survivor raised a weak hand, motioning for Daniel and Lyra to approach. "I must tell you what happened," the survivor said, voice trembling. Daniel gently leaned closer. Lyra stood beside him, listening intently. "Our world was bright, full of energy. Too bright. It drew them in. At first, we did not understand. Ships vanished. Cities went silent. Then we saw them, dark shapes, feeding on our power. Every weapon we used made them stronger." Lyra looked concerned. "Then how did you escape?" "A single ship, small, fast. We hid in debris fields. We shut down our energy core to confuse them. But, at the last moment, they caught our trail. Daniel crossed his arms. And you crashed here. The survivor nodded slowly. Lyra asked softly, "Can they communicate? Negotiate?" The survivor's eyes darkened with fear. "There is no talking, no reason, no mercy. They only consume." Mara spoke sharply. "Then we stop them here. Humanity has defended itself before." The survivor looked at her with sad eyes. "You do not understand. They do not attack like an army. They spread like hunger." Daniel replied firmly. "Then we give them something to choke on." Lyra turned to him. "Humans always say brave things. It is one of your most confusing traits." Daniel smirked. "Confusing? Or inspiring?" Lyra blinked. "Both." The first attack. Outside the base, the shadow shapes finally reached the perimeter. They moved like liquid darkness, touching the lunar surface with tendrils that melted rock into glowing cracks. Their internal red glows brightened as they approached the shield. Inside the control room, the atmosphere was tense. "Shields at 90%, a technician reported. "Energy buildup detected in the approaching entities," another added. Then, boom, a massive shockwave slammed into the shield. The entire base trembled. Daniel grabbed the edge of a console. "What was that?" the technician shouted. "They're draining the shield's power," Mara cursed. "We can't hold them off forever." "I know then." Lyra stepped forward, scanning the dark forms through the glass viewport. "Their structure? It shifts when they absorb energy. The more energy they get, the stronger they become." Daniel replied, "So we can't use lasers or plasma. What about kinetic force?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Kinetic might work. They cannot consume momentum." Mara switched her communicator. "All kinetic weapon systems online. Turrets 3 through 7. Fire when ready." Outside, heavy metal projectiles launched from magnetic rails. They flew toward the shadow creatures at high speed. The first projectile hit one of the dark forms. Crack! The creature shattered like glass, breaking into fragments that dissolved into dust. The room erupted in cheers. Daniel allowed himself a brief smile. "We can fight them." Lyra studied the readings. "Yes, but there are more coming." As if on cue, the horizon darkened even further. Dozens, no, hundreds of shapes approached, crawling across the lunar surface like a spreading shadow. Mara's hands clenched. "That's a swarm." Daniel turned to Lyra. "We need a plan. Fast." Lyra's crystal glowed faintly as she analyzed the creature fragments. "They fold energy inwards. Their bodies are unstable without external power. If we disrupt their energy center," Daniel finished her thought, "we can stop them entirely." The survivor, listening weakly from the medical bed, whispered, "There is one way. A pulse that cancels their feeding pattern. But it must be strong and stable." Daniel asked, "How strong?" The survivor looked directly at him. "Strong enough to cut off all energy in a wide area. A blackout." Lyra froze. A blackout on the moon's surface would shut down shields, life support, oxygen circulation, everything. Daniel swallowed. "But it would also weaken them." Mara stepped forward. "If we coordinate a timed pulse and follow with kinetic strikes, we might survive." Daniel nodded. "Then we do it." Lyra hesitated. "But Daniel, humans cannot survive without life support." Daniel turned to her, eyes steady. "Then we make sure the fight ends before the blackout ends." Lyra stared at him for a long moment. Something new in her expression, respect, mixed with worry. "Humans," she whispered, "are truly strange." He grinned. "You haven't seen anything yet. The plan begins." Command approved the risky strategy. Engineers prepared an energy-nullifying pulse device, while kinetic turrets focused on thinning the growing swarm. Lyra stayed beside Daniel, her crystal glowing with nervous energy. "Are you afraid?" Daniel asked quietly. Lyra shook her head slowly. "I do not fear for myself. I fear for all of you. For what may happen if we fail." Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We aren't going to fail. Lyra looked at him with shining eyes. Humans say that, even when the universe is breaking around them. Daniel smirked. That's why we're still here. Outside, the swarm drew closer, covering the lunar horizon like a living storm. Inside the base, the energy pulse device began to hum. Pulse charging, an engineer announced. 30 seconds until release. Mara raised her voice. All teams prepare for immediate deployment after the pulse. This is our only chance. Daniel took a deep breath. Lyra whispered, Good luck, Daniel. He nodded. You too. The lights dimmed. The pulse rose in pitch, and the shadow swarm crawled closer. 10 seconds. 5, 3, 2, 1. Pulse released. A wave of silent white energy exploded outward, and everything went dark. The pulse had spread across the lunar surface like a silent storm. For a moment, all energy, all light, all motion seemed frozen. The swarm of shadow creatures, the devourers, stiffened in place, their forms trembling as if caught in invisible chains. Even the glowing fragments of the crashed ship on the horizon stilled, suspended like frozen fireflies in the dust. Inside Luna Base, the lights flickered and dimmed. Life support systems, communication consoles, and shields went silent. Engineers scrambled in the darkness, relying on emergency lights and training alone. Daniel gritted his teeth as he felt the familiar hum of power disappear. The pulse had worked, but it had come at a cost. Status report, Mara shouted, moving quickly through the med-chamber hallway. Her boots made soft but confident sounds on the metallic floor. Dr. Amina's voice rang from the medical bay. Survivor stable. Life signs normal. The Aetherin crystal is still working. No casualties so far. Daniel exhaled a shaky breath. Good. Now let's see if we can finish this. The kinetic strike. Outside, in the faint lunar light, the swarm remained motionless giant, undulating shadows frozen mid-step. This was the perfect opportunity for Luna Base to strike. Daniel and Lyra moved toward the turret control room. Kinetic weapons were still ready. Their magnetic rails cooled and waiting. Mara followed closely. Lyra's crystal glowed faintly, responding to the pulse she had helped stabilize. They are weak, but fragile. If struck carelessly, they might scatter, but some fragments may survive. Daniel nodded. We don't just want to scatter them. We need to neutralize them. The team synchronized with the engineers. Daniel and Lyra observed energy readings on every monitor. The Devourers were completely dependent on energy. With the pulse temporarily cutting off their feeding capability, the kinetic strikes could shatter them before their internal energy recovered. Daniel pressed his hand on the main control console. Turrets, fire sequence ready? Ready, a technician confirmed. Wait until I give the signal, Daniel said, his voice steady. We need perfect timing. Lyra watched closely, analyzing each shadow's energy pattern. Daniel, their internal flow is starting to stabilize. We have very little time. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Then let's not waste it, he gave the order. The turrets activated with a hum, charging the projectiles with magnetic energy. One by one, the rails accelerated the massive bolts toward the frozen swarm. Crash, crash, crash. The first volley hit the swarm. Shadows exploded like ink in water, fragments dissolving into harmless dust. The remaining creatures twitched violently, trying to restore their form, but the pulse prevented full recovery. Daniel's pulse scanner beeped. They're unstable. Fire everything. The room exploded with activity as the second volley of projectiles struck the remaining forms. This time, entire clusters of shadows shattered completely, leaving only faint trails of red energy that fizzled into nothingness. Lyra gasped. They are dissolving. Mara breathed a sigh of relief. Good. Keep firing until all are gone. The final group of Devourers, the largest cluster, lunged forward instinctively, but before they could reach Luna Base, kinetic projectiles struck every part simultaneously. The monsters screamed a low, hollow sound that vibrated through the surface, and then they were gone. Dissolved. Neutralized. Defeated. Daniel exhaled heavily. Is it over? Lyra scanned the horizon. Yes. For now. Their energy is dispersed. There are no active forms remaining. Mara's lips curved into a small smile. Human ingenuity and brave aliens. We did it. Daniel turned toward the med pod. The survivor looked weak but alive, their glowing lines flickering softly as the aetherin crystal continued to stabilize them. Lyra knelt beside the survivor, whispering in soft aetherin words. The creature responded with tiny movements, eyes brightening. Finally, it let out a small, almost happy sound. Daniel watched, feeling a mix of relief and awe. Humans had survived countless threats, but this was the first time he had seen an entire alien species saved because of their courage and clever strategy. Aftermath. Inside Luna Base, engineers immediately restored systems. Lights flickered back on. Life support hummed steadily, and shield generators returned to full capacity. Emergency alarms stopped, leaving only the low, steady hum of a functional base. Daniel removed his helmet, wiping sweat from his brow. Everyone check yourself. We've earned a short break. Mara clapped him on the shoulder. You did good, Hale. Couldn't have done it without you. Lyra looked at Daniel with genuine admiration. Humans fight even when all seems hopeless. You do not wait for hope, you create it. Daniel chuckled. We try our best. Lyra smiled. Your species is fascinating. Daniel glanced at the survivor. How are they? Lyra checked her crystal. Stable. They should recover fully if they rest here for a few days. Daniel nodded. Good. They'll be safe. A lesson learned. Later, Daniel and Lyra stood on the observation deck, looking at the lunar surface where the swarm had been. Dust clouds settled slowly, and the horizon was calm once more. The earth shone in the distance, peaceful and unchanging. Lyra turned to Daniel. I have learned much today. Daniel raised an eyebrow. About what? How to dodge alien monsters? She shook her head. No. About humans. You fight not only for survival but for others. You act with courage. And even when facing danger, you do not hesitate to help. It is remarkable. Daniel smiled. You could say the same for Aetherin. You stayed calm, helped the survivor, and guided us on energy patterns. Without you, we might have failed. Lyra's crystal shimmered. Perhaps together we are stronger. Daniel laughed lightly. That's the truth. Humans and aliens, standing side by side. Who would have guessed? She tilted her head, curious. By the way, Daniel, about the question I asked earlier. Daniel froze for a second, remembering the engine room and her innocent inquiry about human mating habits. Yes, he said, smiling wryly. Lyra's silver eyes sparkled. It is not a matter of embarrassment for you? Daniel shook his head, chuckling. Not anymore. After today, nothing feels embarrassing. Lyra blinked. Then, one day, you may tell me the truth. Daniel laughed. Maybe someday. Hope for the future. The survivor slowly regained strength over the next few days. Lyra continued studying them, fascinated by their biology and energy patterns. Daniel and the Luna Base crew shared stories, meals, and laughter with both Lyra and the survivor, forming bonds that bridged worlds. The threat of the Devourers, though halted, remained a concern. Luna Base scientists began designing early warning systems for energy-absorbing entities. Weapons, shields, and emergency protocols were all upgraded. Humanity had faced many dangers before, but the Devourers were unlike any other threat, a reminder that courage, cleverness, and collaboration were vital for survival. Lyra often stood beside Daniel during these operations, observing humans, asking questions, and marveling at their resilience. You are extraordinary, she said quietly one evening as they watched Earth from the observation deck. Even after all this, you continue your work, your study, your lives. Daniel looked at her and smiled. Humans don't give up. We adapt, We survive. And sometimes, we even make friends with aliens along the way. Lyra laughed softly. Friends. Yes. I believe the universe may be safer with humans like you, Daniel nodded. Then we keep learning, keep fighting, and keep standing. A new beginning. The survivor recovered fully and eventually shared more about their home world, culture, and warnings about the devourers. Luna Base became a center of cooperation between humans and the Etherin. Together, they developed plans to protect the solar system, explore uncharted space, and help any species threatened by cosmic dangers. Daniel realized that this was more than a battle, it was a beginning. Humans were not only survivors but protectors. They had faced the unknown, stood against overwhelming odds, and won. And, in doing so, they earned respect not just from aliens, but from themselves. Lyra's curiosity about human biology never disappeared, but Daniel now answered her questions with humor and patience. What had once seemed awkward or embarrassing became a symbol of trust and friendship. Through understanding and courage, two very different species had found common ground. As Daniel watched the moon's horizon, the Earth rising in the distance, he smiled. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and mysteries, but for now, humanity had stood strong, and maybe, just maybe, they were ready for whatever came next.